Hi everyone, welcome to the Envelopes Emmy Contender Series. I'm Yvonne Villarreal, and today we're talking to America Ferrera, who stars in NBC's Superstore as Amy, a jaded employee at a mega store. And we'll be taking your questions as well, so shoot them over in our comment section. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course. Hi.
We were just saying we're competing with Sessions.
Yes, yes. I wonder how our ratings are going to match up to
So guys,
Sessions.
Bring in the ratings for us. How do these fluorescent lights compare to the ones on set?
That's hilarious. These are pretty fluorescent lights. I bet my skin looks very pretty. It's like the set's amazing. Have you been down to our set yet?
No, I've been close, but it's always never worked out timing-wise.
You should come this season when we start back up.
But is it just like a lot all the time?
It is, but it's, tricks, magic tricks. Mm-hmm. Our DP is so amazing, and so it still has that like Superstore fluorescent feel, and he still finds a way to make us all look pretty.
Okay, well that's all.
Which we're all grateful for.
That's important. Well, 2 seasons in, I mean, how would you describe what it's been like being on a true comedy? Like Ugly Betty was a dramedy, so you had a little bit of balance. But what is it like been doing this now?
Well, it's been amazing, but definitely sort of new to me, outside my wheelhouse. I'd never done sort of just like a straight sitcom comedy, and the cast is so incredible. We have real veterans of the comedy world. Mark McKinney starred in Kids in the Hall, and Colton Dunn, who came from the UCB world, Nico Santos, who's a stand-up, Lauren Ash, who comes from Second City. So it's a real sort of comedic breeded cast, and I feel like I've learned so much in these last 2 years of just working with them, letting it sink in, getting comfortable in my character, because the more time you spend with the character, the more you know them, and the easier it is to kind of have fun. But it's been amazing, and what's really fun is the relationship between the actors and the writers. The writers, we have a fabulous group of writers, but the more they get to know you as actors and you as characters, they write to you, and then they write something that you love, and you go with that, and then they go further into it, or you'll show up and they'll introduce some whole new weird thing that your character does or dynamic that you have, and then it just opens up a whole new aspect of the character. So that, I think, relationship between the writer's room and the cast is a really, really important one in comedy. And I think one that only gets better and deeper with every season.
Do they now know that they can't write rabbits into the scene? I explain to those who didn't see Seth Meyers, but
well, I directed an episode in season 2, which was so fun and amazing. And one of the scenes that I had to direct was myself in an apartment with 25 rabbits, real rabbits. And I thought nothing of it. I was like, oh, that's cute, fluffy rabbits. I wonder how we're going to control them. But I didn't realize until I got into the room with that many rabbits that I'm actually afraid of rabbits. And I never knew.
What is it though? The eyes?
I think it's like the eyes on the side, the way they hop is sort of like unpredictable. And then, rabbits, they couldn't crossbreed. Like if you put 2 breeds, they fight.
Oh.
And then oftentimes, like, 2 males will fight, and they can get pretty kind of vicious. I mean, I don't mean to give rabbits a bad rap, but like, they're more kind of aggressive than you would think. You think they're like these fluffy rabbits. I'm not a rabbit professional, so I might be overgeneralizing based on the rabbits that I met and knew in the room. But Are
they hard to direct?
They're so hard to direct. And it was hard because I was directing myself. And for the first 3 days, I wasn't on camera, which was a dream. And then the last 2 days, I had to act, which was hard enough. And then they added 25 rabbits. I don't know what I did to the writers. They just were like, how do we give America like the most complicated day she possibly make me direct, act in a scene with rabbits? And I'm terrified.
I once had a rabbit as a pet.
See, but I think one at a time.
Well, someone stole the rabbit, and then I saw them walking it down the street with a leash. It was very weird.
Did you confront them?
No, I was in a car, like we were driving somewhere, and I was telling my mom, oh my God, that's a rabbit. Anyway, it was weird.
And you just let it go.
We just let it go.
Well, see, I feel like one rabbit at a time would be
You
different.
could do it.
I think 25 is a lot.
Okay.
25 of anything is a lot, you know?
Well, had you always wanted to direct? Like, how did this sort of materialize?
Yeah, no, when I was on Betty, we talked about it, but it was too overwhelming. I was in every single scene. We had no hiatus weeks. There was no way for me to like prep and all of that. So it didn't end up happening, but it was something that I always wanted to do, was sort of direct an episode of television. And Justin and I started talking about it last summer. And what's great about our half-hour comedies usually get breaks in between. So I was able to, on my off week, prep to direct.
How deep does your prep go? We had Constance Zimmer on, who was talking about her first time, and she color-coded everything. And how were you in the prep thing?
I didn't color code everything, but I was pretty. I started way in advance because I knew it was happening. So I sat down with as many people on the, on the sort of crew that I could. I sat with the editor for a while to really kind of go through his process and see, what he works with. Because, editors see it all. They see the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they know what makes it into the cut, what doesn't, when directors sort of are doing a great job or when they're maybe like not getting it or maybe missing coverage. So I sat down with James, our editor, for a couple days and learned from his point of view, and then spent a lot of time with my DP, Jay Hunter, and we sort of walked through all the scenes, which most directors do, but I think I started as early as I could because I wanted to feel comfortable, and I had never directed and acted at the same time, so that was new to me, so I wanted to be as prepared as I could be.
Was it empowering to like yell action? Like, did you feel like this?
The yelling action like isn't the most fun part of the job. I would forget to yell action, especially if I was in the scene. I was like sitting there waiting, and I was like, "Oh, that's me. Okay, action." But it was, for me, like working with the actors, and really my favorite part of directing is like getting lost in the performances, like getting to just watch the performances and get lost in them and follow along and then imagine where else it could go. That to me is the fun and the magic of it, and I loved working with my cast. Did
they take direction while your co-stars?
They were very kind to me. They took direction, so I thank them for that. But no, it was great. And look, our show, it's a true ensemble. There's a lot of improvising going on, and we usually are like, we're usually in the scene anyway as actors, talking to each other, to the writer on set, to the director about like, oh, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? So in a way, we're all always kind of involved in the collaboration. So it didn't feel that different from what we'd already been doing.
On the episode, which was titled Mateo's Last Day, right? There's undertones about, him being undocumented. Was it planned that you were going to direct this one? Like, it seems like a perfect fit for you,
I know.
Given your activism, or did it just sort of happen?
I think it just sort of happened. It was really about like where in the schedule I could like get off to prep and be ready. Maybe it was in some way intentional or subconscious on the writer's part, but no, we introduced Mateo as undocumented in the first episode back in season 2, and then we touched on it in the election episode, and then this was sort of like the first episode for Mateo that was really focused on that for him, and I loved it. Obviously it's a issue very close to my heart, one that I've been involved with the undocumented community for a long time. But what I loved about it is, we know Mateo as a person, as a fun, loving, silly, extreme character, and being undocumented doesn't define him as a character. It's sort of a color and a nuance to him, and it allowed us to sort of pull back some of the Mateo layers of his sort of cattiness and his competitiveness and his sort of do or die attitude at work, which, you know, in some parts are ingrained in his need to survive. So it was fun to peel back those layers. And Nico...
And the lengths he was willing to go to. I mean, he risked love. He was willing to get beat up.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want...
Yeah. So we were able to, you know, explore some of that reality, but it's this fine line of, you know, we're a comedy and we always want to be coming from a place of making people laugh and finding the funny. But what our writers are so great at is taking something that's a very real issue, finding the pathos of it, and like letting the comedy come from the reality of it. So right when it's about to get really, really sad, or right when you feel really sad for him, like something comes in and undercuts it, so that we remember, you know, we don't really sit in any of the, you know, the sadness of it. Like life, it's like we go in it and we come out, and we're still all the other things that we are, even if we're, you know, sad on top of it.
Well, let's take a question from social. The show sweetly tackled hard topics such as immigration. What kind of conversations did you have as director with the writers on how to navigate that storyline and any storylines? I mean, you're a producer on the show.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get to have some say in the types of things that you guys discuss. I mean, there's been gun control. You tackle a lot of societal issues. So talk about, you know, your involvement in some of that.
Well, you know, just being in kind of constant conversation with Justin and the writers, and when something comes up, you know, talking about, you know, for instance, with in the election episode, it was this fine line between, you know, Mateo wanting to get an "I voted" sticker, but writing that line of like, well, do we really want the only undocumented character on broadcast television to commit voter fraud, which is not really an issue. And even though we are just a TV show, you know, we are one of the very few images of an undocumented person on television. So there's a responsibility in that, and ultimately decided, you know, to play the laughs and play him getting the "I voted" sticker without ever seeing him commit voter fraud, because that was important to us to not be perpetuating sort of a false narrative about undocumented people. So we talk about those sort of things of like, where's the line? And really overall, you know, just looking for, like at the beginning of this season, all of us went into the writer's room, all the actors, to talk about, you know, what we love in our characters, what we're hoping to explore further. So our writers are super collaborative with us, and are always looking for ways to find the kind of real world stuff that they can bring out. And a lot of that comes from a lot of our interactions. There have been a few episodes that have been based on things that happened like with our cast and in our cast. Like our all-nighter episode in season 1, where we all get locked in the store and we're there all night, and it's sort of this fun sort of breakfast clubby night that they have, was based on, during our pilot episode, we had an all-night shoot, and we just started to go crazy. At a certain point,
and
like,
you guys shot it in actual like Kmart,
yeah,
right?
We shot the pilot in an actual Kmart. But so we just started losing it, and like none of us were drunk, but we felt drunk, and we like literally staged a fashion show, and we were rapping, and we were dancing, and we were like sleeping on the beds. We were like, just went through a whole crazy night, and the writers had so much fun watching us, and that's what inspired that episode. So it is a real sort of living, breathing thing where we, where it all is reacting to each other.
Well, let's talk about Amy in season 2. I mean, her storyline this season, to put it succinctly, was emotional. I mean, she comes to the realization, or maybe she finally confronts herself about, I'm not really happy in my life right now. And we see her sort of dealing with, you know, her marriage issues, and it's a tough thing, because like if she were single, maybe it'd be different, but she's got a family, and what does that mean in terms of her family unit? Talk about exploring her deeper this season, and how that sort of helped anchor you to her.
Yeah, you know, I feel like that's why I initially loved this character, was from the get-go in the pilot, there were so many walls, you know, and she she's been working at Cloud9 for over 10 years. In the pilot, it's been 10 years. And, you know, she's a fairly young, very smart, very, you know, grounded person. And yet you realize that there's something about her that's a little bit sort of resigned and shut off and closed off. And that's what's so, I think, electric about the relationship with her and Jonah is Jonah has a very different experience of life and the world and still sort of sees magic and possibility everywhere he looks. And she's sort of like, yeah, no, I'm past that. But he begins to sort of awaken something in her. And I think she's at this place in her life where she is for the first time thinking like, you know, what is how do I feel in my marriage? How do I feel about work? How do I feel about this job? How do I feel about the people I work with? And so watching her sort of wake up to some of those things has been a lot of fun in season 2. And I think, you know, we ended season 2 with a very, like a life and death situation, which for everyone is a reality check, you know, when you literally think this could be it, this is my life, everybody stops and wonders like, oh my goodness, like what am I doing in my life? Am I happy with where I'm at? Like what am I doing with the time that I have? So I think for season 3, all of the characters are gonna have a little bit of a reaction to that.
You've now become like a GIF with Ben, with that kiss scene.
Oh,
have you seen it floating around?
I don't.
You're like the new Jim and Pam.
Oh, okay.
But how do you feel about that? Because for so long, it was sort of like, do we want this? Will they, won't they to happen? Because she is married and, you know, as like they were sort of adversaries and then became like sort of good friends, best friends. And then we see them, you know, they obviously have admiration for each other. How do you feel about the developments?
Yeah, well, I think what's fun about the kiss is it happened in a moment of duress. You know, they thought they were gonna die, and the store is falling apart, and obviously she's in a very particular place in her marriage, and you know, I think what's fun about the moment is it came out of the moment. So we could pick up and really don't know where it's going to go from here. It doesn't mean that they're together and going to walk out, you know, walk hand in hand towards the sunset. We don't know where it's going to go. And she does have a marriage and she does have a family and she's grown. So like, you know, she knows that, you know, sometimes a kiss is a kiss, or you know, sometimes you do have feelings for someone, but that's just not what it's meant to be. Or, you know, what I loved about this show and about this character, and what I talked to Justin about really early on was, you know, I'm not interested in playing a character whose journey is about falling in love, or falling, you know, going from one guy to the other guy. And so Jonah and Amy is a part of both of their journeys. And their attraction to each other and their energy with each other is an element of it, but it isn't by any means sort of the end-all be-all of this relationship. I could very easily see a world in which maybe they end up together, and I can also see a world where they don't, and they're just sort of two people who came into each other's lives and ignited each other in some way. And that's what it was meant to be. So it really is a will they, won't they, because we don't know. We don't know. Justin doesn't know. We haven't really made any conclusions about it. We're sort of just living in it and seeing what's interesting. What can we explore with this relationship?
Do you prefer playing the platonic, though? Is that more fun to play?
I don't really think that there is such a thing as platonic. You know, I think that when there's energy between two people, that energy is there. And so even if they're just being friends, there's still always that underlying tension that is, I feel energy for you, or we have a dynamic that is flirtatious, and you know, I think everybody has those friends where, like, you know, there's a fun there that may go unexplored, but it's part of what makes the friendship kind of sing and be alive, and so whether they explore it or not doesn't. I actually think that, you know, and TV shows us that the moment you get to express the tension, then it's sort of like it's all done, right? Yeah. Then it's like everybody wants them to kiss, but do you really want them to kiss? Do you really want them to be together?
How did you feel when you saw it in the script? in
it
the
just
finale.
made sense to me. You know, it made sense to me that, like, yeah, that makes sense to me that especially where the season had been going, and then, you know, the episode before it was the wedding episode, where Jonah showed up for Amy in a really wonderful way, where she was feeling sort of lonely and confused about what's happening in her marriage. You know, there was a real friendship moment there, and sure, there was like romance, but he really showed up for her as a friend. And so I get really excited when the relationship is deepening, because then there's just so much more to play, and it doesn't really matter if they're kissing or not kissing. You understand how these people feel about each other.
Well, let's take another question.
Are these online questions?
Yeah. Well, this is about the finale. We saw Cloud9 destroyed by a tornado. What happens now? Like, do you know how soon after we pick up?
I do. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
I do know where it's going, but I don't think I'm allowed to say.
What was it like even shooting that stuff? Like,
it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy, and it was really sad because they really destroyed the store. And the whole week we just walked through the store, and it was a disaster. Like, things were just broken, and just as the week went on, the store got more and more destroyed. And I actually didn't expect to be so moved at the end of the finale, when it's destroyed and you know, you kind of pan out and see this big hole in the ceiling, and their lives sort of completely turned upside down. I thought, like, oh, this is going to be shocking, or this is going to, maybe it's going to be really kind of outlandish and funny. But it played so real that I felt for the world. I felt for the characters, and like, oh no, what now for them? And we'll get to see starting season 3.
Another one is a season returns seem to be on the fence. What's that uncertainty like for the cast? Like, waiting to hear.
Oh, waiting to hear if you get picked up for another season? Oh, it's the worst.
The worst.
It's the worst. You know, it's waiting. You know, it's the funny thing about television is, you know, you have to commit to an arc and to every episode and to every season, not knowing what's next. And it's the tricky part of television. But, you know, Justin and I talk about this all the time, which is like, if we only have this, what are the stories we want to tell? Like, if we only get season 1, we have to do the strike. If season 2 is the end, what will we be sad if we don't get to see this? And now we know that we have 22 full episodes for season 3. So I think we're having those same conversations, you know. If this is our last season, if these are the last 22 episodes of this show, what are the stories we really need to tell before, but you know, because our future is uncertain. So
well, and Amy and Betty are both sort of underdogs. Is there something about playing that you enjoy?
You know, I don't know that that's necessarily
the reason.
The thread. I think, you know, they feel very different to me. What I really love about Amy is, you know, she doesn't have any of the kind of trappings of a heroine or of a leading lady or of you know, a character with some large arc. And she doesn't necessarily read as someone who like should be very secure in herself and very, you know, grounded, but she is. And you know, she has a job that is a job. She has a family. She's had the experiences she had that maybe other people might judge as like, you know, whether she was like stunted because she had a kid at 18 or she's been in the same job, like all of the outward judgments that people might make on someone in that circumstance, she sort of defies all of those. She's comfortable with who she is. She doesn't need to climb a ladder to feel good about herself. She doesn't need to, you know, she doesn't need Jonah to like think she's sexy to like walk in confidently. She doesn't necessarily need to be going somewhere in life to feel her value as a person. And that was really interesting to me about her, that Whereas Betty was like, I'm going to go conquer the world, you know, and I'm going to achieve all these things that I've set out to do, and I'm going to prove myself. There was a real like proving of herself, which I relate to, and as I mature, I'm drawn towards the sort of inner stillness and the inner groundedness of a woman who's doesn't really look to the outside things to find her worth and her value. And that's what was really interesting to me about Amy. And so they feel very different to me.
Well, and going into season 3, I mean, this has been obviously in the conversation a lot in this Trump America now. Like, do you feel an extra call to action in terms of what types of stories you want to see Superstore explore in season 3?
You know, I think that what the show's been doing already is trying to keep as many people in the conversation as possible. You know, this sort of like gap between different kinds of people living in different versions of America did not start last year. This is, you know, we see this sort of growing gap for years, and this feeling of we all go to our own things that make sense to us, right? We curate our social media feeds, we curate the cable news we watch, we curate, you know, things to sort of agree with what we already feel and know, and so there are fewer and fewer places where we have to talk to each other and hear from people who don't agree with you, and what I loved about what Superstore was doing from the very beginning, and not in reaction to the last, you know, 16 months or 18 months or whatever, but in reaction to that feeling of what's happening in our culture, is how do we create spaces where more people can be a part of the conversation? And the way Justin did that through comedy is he created real people and real characters from very, very different backgrounds. You know, Glenn's a very devout Christian man, and Garrett is, you know, in a wheelchair and he's mixed race, and Mateo, I keep wanting to say the actors' names. It takes me a second to. Mateo, you know, is an immigrant from the Philippines, and Amy is a high school, you know, pregnant teen mother who's, you know, so everybody comes from such different backgrounds. It's not just diversity of skin color, diversity of race, it's diversity of life experience. And because we establish these characters as people, as full people, you come to learn them and to know them. And so any conversation we're having about guns or Plan B or abortion or elections or, you know, immigration, we're not talking about issues, we're talking about people. And we're seeing it through the eyes of people that we've learned to like, you know? So to answer your question about what I think is important right now for me personally, and this is separate from the sort of mandate of the show and the ethos of the show, what I think personally is important in this time is that we find spaces and conversations where more people can come to the table and be seen and heard, and to see other people and hear other people, because those spaces in our culture are vanishing. So that feels important to me, and it's what TV used to be when there were only 4 channels. I mean, there's pros and cons to it, not to you know. You know, fantasize about what it used to be, but there did used to have to be sort of a common conversation, and it was, you know, the days of Norman Lear, where in the 70s, you know, there was on Maude, he had a woman have an abortion on a comedy in the 70s. You know, the Cosby Show, like that happened on one of the 4 channels that you had to watch, and so culture was more. You know, if culture was happening, it was harder to avoid the conversations that were being had. So there is a part of that I think has a lot of value.
Well, not to like do a total 180, but we're going to go to the lightning round.
Great, let's go to the lightning round.
Okay.
That sounds fun.
What was the last show you binge watched?
Handmaid's Tale.
Good. What show that you love would you want to sit and watch someone else enjoy for the first time?
That's really good. Would I want to sit and watch someone else enjoy for the first time? That's very specific. I mean, I guess Game of Thrones. Like, I always get really jealous of people who like haven't gotten into Game of Thrones yet. Is that you?
Yes.
Okay.
It feels overwhelming.
Okay, well, maybe I'll sit and watch you.
Sit
I'll
and
talk
watch
you
me?
through it.
Okay.
When I got my husband into it, I literally had to like pause it and be like, okay, so she's his uncle. He's married to her. They're brother and sister, but they're doing it. And that's their kid. He's the king, but that's not really his dad. That's his dad. So I'd be your buddy in that way.
I would need it. If you could go back and be on any classic show, what would it be?
Oh my God. If I could go back and be on any classic show. Okay, I have a couple. Can I say a couple? Okay, I'd want to be on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes.
I'd want to be on Saved by the Bell.
Yes.
I'd want to be kind of on California Dreams.
Yes.
I mean, these are my classics. I don't know that they're like cultural
classics
classics. And I feel like I would
we be
want to be on,
sisters?
yes.
Okay.
And I'd want to be on I Love Lucy.
Yes.
I mean, there's a role for me in there.
You're my person.
I could be Ricky's like niece or whatever.
Yes. I'm loving this. What genre would you like to try?
I think like action. Like I've never done action. The closest I got was I did this movie called End of Watch where I got to play a cop and we did a lot of like ride-alongs and trainings and like we went to the police academy and like drove police cars.
Wow.
It was so, we were shooting guns. I don't like shooting guns. It's not my thing. But it was like the closest thing to action that I did and it was like really fun. And I remember like the feeling like such a badass when I was training for that. So an action movie would be fun.
I like that.
Although I'm sure they're so boring to shoot. I'm sure like you spend like all day shooting like 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Probably.
Right. But the training would be fun.
That sounds fun. Walter White or Tony Soprano?
This is where I admit.
Don't tell me you haven't seen either.
I have never seen an episode of Breaking Bad. That's Walter White, right? Or The Sopranos.
Oh my God. This is the first.
But here's the thing is, that's like, if I start, I'm committing like 25 hours of my life. Like, it's not like, it's now like I'd go down the black hole of like 6 seasons of a show and then no one would hear from me and I wouldn't show up to work and there'd be no Superstore for anybody to watch.
If you can get through Game of Thrones, fine.
I know, but I took it little by little.
Little by little. Okay, that's fair. What was your first acting job and what did you learn that you are still using now?
My first acting job I ever had was a Disney Channel movie called Gotta Kick It Up.
Oh my God.
I love when people know about Gotta Kick It Up.
Oh my God.
It's so old school. I was 17 years old. It was my first job ever. I played Yolanda.
Of course. I always get called Yolanda, even though my name's Yvonne.
Oh, because of Gotta Kick It Up?
No, because I'm Mexican.
Just because people are like, oh, it starts with a Y.
It starts with a Y. You're Latina.
What did I learn? That's when I learned that you didn't have to pay for craft services. I was like, I saw the food and I was like, oh my God, like who do we pay for that? They're like, that's for you. Like you can have what you want.
Like,
I was like, are you serious?
Everywhere.
And I would like take it home.
Favorite snack? Snack of choice? At craft service?
Like little, the fruit, what are they called? Fruit snacks.
Fruit snacks. I thought you were going to be like cookies or something.
No, fruit snacks.
Before we end, I do want you to talk about Hentified because I was so excited when I heard that this was happening.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about it, especially like, Boyle Heights is around the corner here.
Yes. Hentified is this really wonderful series that started out as a digital series. It was written and directed by Marvin Lemus and co-written with Linda Yvette Chavez. And they are these awesome young talents and they wrote a digital series about characters living in Boyle Heights and it's called Hentified. And so instead of gentrified, Hentified means like gentrification by the people of the place, of the town. It's sort of like it's a comedy, but it's a very like real and grounded comedy about all the different characters in Boyle Heights that are sort of dealing with this new reality of what Boyle Heights is becoming. It's one of the many parts of Los Angeles that are changing and growing, and there's a lot of friction and tension between, you know, gentrification and what it means for the history and the culture of a place to be sort of, you know, shifting into, you know, a place where hipsters come and a place where the rents go up, but also a place where the people from the community, where they themselves, you know, that line between like what benefits a community and what sort of takes the power and the culture away from the community. So it's very, very funny, very, very stylish.
When
but
can we
also,
see it?
so the digital series is actually premiering at the Sundance Next Fest here in LA.
Okay.
So we're doing a screening of all of the episodes.
Wow.
So if you can get tickets to that,
Okay.
go see that. We have developed it into a full-length half-hour show that will be a full show, and I can't even say where. I don't even know if I can say where it's going to be.
Okay.
I think
But you
we've
have it
closed the
placed,
deal,
yeah.
but we've sold it as a full-length half-hour show, and we're making it a full series.
Well, we'll have to go on set for that.
Yes, you'll
Okay.
have to come to set for that.
Well, thanks so much for being here,
Yeah.
America. It was great having you. And for everyone else, if you want to check out more of our Emmy chats, head over to latimes.com. Thanks.
Thank you.